Welcome to Talkless Water, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of water with those making waves. My name is Todd Bottler, and I'm your host for Talkless Water. My guests today are Shay Ralls Roalson, the Director of Austin Water, and Marisa Flores Gonzalez, the Program Manager for Austin Water's Water Forward Plan. Shay, Marisa, welcome to Talkless Water.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're happy to be here.
And let me just tell everybody that we were down at the Austin City Hall, and we are in a recording studio, a little recording studio. It's so nice. I'm not used to this. I just normally have my iPhone to record, and it's kind of a step up for me. I just want you to.
Us too. Yeah, this is our first time in this studio. Excited to get to use it.
That's great. Well, let's start off with when you both knew in your career that you were going to focus on water. And so, Shay, let's start out with you.
Sure. Well, I grew up in San Antonio, and in those days, San Antonio was entirely dependent on the Edwards Aquifer, and so that was just baked into everyday life and understanding of the importance of the Edwards Aquifer. And in fact, one summer when I was a camp counselor with a girl from Uvalde, and we got into long discussions about the importance of the Edwards Aquifer for all of its uses. They were a heavy agricultural community. We were a heavy urban community. And so, that really brought into focus for me at an early age just the complexities of the water business. And then I went to college and I majored in civil engineering, and I lucked into a few classes on water and wastewater treatment. And then I, after I graduated, I found myself working for a consulting firm that did a lot of water and wastewater resources planning, where we're really planning for the future. And from there, I spent the last 31 years working with water utilities primarily across the state of Texas, and now with Austin Water, just on really thinking about how we use water, how we plan for the use of water, how we make sure that we have enough water for all of our community's needs.
Great. Marisa, how about you?
So I'm also from San Antonio, Texas. So apparently San Antonio creates wonderful water advocates with the level of education that you see everywhere about how important our water resources are. And my dad was actually a drafter. He didn't go to college. He worked for engineering firms. And he started his own small business providing support services to engineering firms. And he got lots of small minority business contracts with utilities, including San Antonio Water System. And those really provided a path to prosperity for our family. And I got kind of an inside scoop on how important water utilities are and the great services that they provide to our communities, and that really sparked my interest. I went to UT in Austin, and I studied geography and environmental studies, and after that I went and I worked for a small public works department in a suburban city in San Antonio again, and got to work in stormwater and water and wastewater and wear a lot of hats, and then eventually moved to Austin Water. And I've been doing this work in water resources planning now for over 10 years, and have just loved every minute of it and the opportunity to really serve our community.
Well, it's really interesting. We all have kind of the San Antonio connection in common. I was working for Judge Lucius Bunton, who had the Endangered Species Act cases over the Edwards in the 90s. And I, like you, Shay, had lots of conversations with folks out in Medina and Uvalde County about the importance of Edwards water for irrigation. And, kind of picking up on what you were saying, Marisa, I think, San Antonio is kind of an incubator for people with unique water careers, because that's a unique situation. And if you understand that, understanding, what's going on in a lot of the rest of the states, a lot easier. It's not quite as complex in some ways. So And I know I will get some emails about saying that, but hey, it's just my opinion. So Shay, where does Austin get its water?
Well, the city of Austin gets all of our water from the Colorado River, and that's the Texas Colorado River that starts in West Texas, runs through Austin, and then all the way down to Matagorda Bay. And the Lower Colorado River is managed by the Lower Colorado River Authority, and they manage a series of lakes, beginning with Lake Buchanan, all the way down to Lake Austin. And we have City of Austin, Austin Water has 3 water treatment plants. 2 of them are our oldest 2 plants, Ulrich and Davis, take water from Lake Austin. And our newest plant, Hancock's water treatment plant, takes water from Lake Travis.
So, Austin obviously has experienced phenomenal growth over the last few decades. Shay, how has Austin Water accommodated the needs of all these new residents and the companies that are here now and who need water?
Well, from 2008 to 2016, not only were we experiencing huge growth, we were also experiencing a new drought of record. And so credit to our community that they really were partnered with us to reduce their per capita water consumption. And so we really drove water use down during that time and really raised awareness with all of our customers. And it gave the opportunity too for us to have a lot of conversations with our commercial and industrial customers about how they were using water and how they could expand their use of reclaimed water. So Marisa can really talk about our efforts in achieving fit for purpose water use, because not all of our demands for water need to be drinking water, need to be potable water. We have a lot of demands for non-potable water that we can serve with reclaimed water. So the foundation of our planning for growth in our community is first and foremost water conservation. Obviously, the less water we use is the less water we need to take from the lakes. And then reclaimed water. And when I talk about reclaimed water, what I mean is we collect all of the used water from our customers and treat it to a high level at our major wastewater treatment plants. And a portion of that water is reused in our community for non-potable uses. So that's our reclaimed water system. So water conservation first, and reclaimed water for non-potable needs second, and additional supplies on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've really worked hard on trying to develop a plan that stretches our supplies as much as possible, using that kind of progression of supplies and strategies that Shay just described. And this idea of fit for purpose is really trying to transition from using potable water for purposes where it's not necessary, for things like outdoor irrigation or cooling or toilet flushing. Transition away from that and be able to use on-site sources of water from stormwater, rainwater, gray water, even black water reuse within a building, and being able to offset the amount of potable water that we use and ultimately that we divert from the Colorado River or use from the Highland Lakes.
So programs like that require a lot of, I guess, retrofitting of buildings and households. How does that work?
So we're really trying to capitalize on the amount of growth that is happening within the city of Austin. Rather than retrofitting, we're focusing on preparing new development to be as water efficient as possible and to make use of other on-site sources. So we have regulations in place to require that large developments install on-site reuse systems or to connect to our centralized reclaimed system. We know that over time there's going to be redevelopment that happens, and as that redevelopment occurs, we want to be able to capture those buildings and then set them up for success in the future.
Seems like we're always preparing for the summer. And so, Marisa, even though it's still winter, I know you must be thinking about the upcoming summer. And I just saw, I guess it was the day before yesterday maybe, LCRA, Lower Colorado River Authority, announced that the storage in the Highland Lakes was such that they were not going to be releasing water downstream for irrigation. Mm-hmm. How would you characterize the status of your current supplies getting, ready to, deal with the summer?
Sure. So combined storage in Lakes Travis and Buchanan is currently around half full. And we started a La Nina condition around December 2024. We're still in La Nina, which for our region typically means hotter and drier conditions. We do expect that during the spring, March to May, we'll transition back into an ENSO neutral condition. That still means, though, that we'll experience Texas spring and summer, which is hotter and drier. We have been in drought for several years now. We've been having inflows into the Highland Lakes that are much lower than historical averages when you look across the entire period of record since the Highland Lakes were built back in 1942. So we have been watching inflows, we've been watching combined storage, and we've been preparing to implement additional conservation strategies as we move into the summer time frame. Depending on spring rains, and we do typically get some amount of rain in kind of the May or June timeframe, we could see that drought conditions do worsen. And if drought conditions worsen, we'll be prepared to implement progressively, more strict levels of conservation via our drought contingency plan.
So let's talk a little bit about the drought contingency plan and how Austin Water responds to those conditions. What are some of the key elements in those plans?
Yeah. So as drought conditions worsen, Austin Water employs a variety of strategies. Within our drought contingency plan, we have specific stages of water use that get progressively more restrictive. Austin is also progressive in that we do implement 1 day per week watering restrictions on automatic irrigation 365 days out of the year, no matter what the condition is. So that's our baseline. As we see more severe conditions, we start to reduce the window of time in which folks can irrigate using automatic irrigation systems. And we also have progressively more restrictive requirements around different uses of outdoor watering. We have a significant effort that we implement to educate our community, to do public outreach, and to communicate how important it is to conserve as we get deeper and deeper into drought. We have a few different tools to do that. We'll engage our customers through social media, through radio or media spots, and we also encourage folks to sign up for our My ATX Water portal. As Austin Water has replaced all of the meters in our system with digital smart meters, we have also opened up the opportunity for the utility to have greater engagement with our customers via this portal. When folks sign up, they can get more real-time alerts about their water usage that can let them know if they're using a higher amount than normal. We can provide leak alerts to folks, and we can also provide tips and information on ways that folks can reduce their water usage and manage their customer bills.
So I think a really important part of what Marisa is talking about is engaging with our community and our customers. So we know that our goals as a community for water conservation, these are not goals we can reach just by putting more money and resources from Austin Water. These are goals that our customers have to help us reach. And so a big part of all of our efforts are related to educating our customers on what their opportunities are around their homes and businesses to reduce their water use, providing educational materials, providing resources, providing rebates to help give them the guidance, and then the real-time feedback from their smart meter to see the results of those actions. Mm-hmm. And so all of that works together so that people can understand the role they have to play and then see it actually working. And we know that these strategies work because in the last drought of record, our community partnered with us and responded to really drive our water conservation programs and drive our per person water use down.
Well, I have a smart meter, and I can tell you that they work. I mean, anytime my water use goes up, I'm like, okay, what happened? Who did what? So I know I pay attention to that. It's a neat tool to have. Did you want to add something, Marisa?
Oh, no. Whenever I get an alert that my daily water use has exceeded its average, I know that my husband is in the backyard watering the tiny patch of grass that we have, so I can send him a text alert on my...
Yeah, gotcha.
I usually get them when my UT student is home doing his laundry.
Yeah.
Okay. So, think about these measures. I know when you're trying to communicate to the public and get them to cut back their lawn watering, for example. It's not like stopping a car on a dime. It's more like stopping a battleship. And it takes a while for the message to filter down to people and the people to change their behavior and do things like that. So I'm just kind of curious, which of these measures do you really kind of see as being the more effective when you're in a drought situation like we might be in, or we're still in, but might be even more concerned about it this summer?
Well, I think the effectiveness of each measure can really vary depending on the severity of the drought and who the customer is and what is important to them about how they use water. And so that's really why we're trying to have a variety of tools in our toolbox. We're trying to, we have landscape transformation rebates. So if you will convert from grass to native landscaping, we have a rebate for that, and we have guidance for you on what to plant and where to plant it. Or another element that we have is what we call laundry to landscape. And so this is the ability to reuse your laundry water in your yard. We can help you do that too. And just a variety of, we have a very popular program called Bucks for Business. So that's where we will get in with commercial customers and help them understand how they can reduce their water use. So we're really trying to provide a variety of tools so that whatever your interest is, we can meet you where you are.
So these tools are designed to kind of complement each other in some ways?
That's right. And our uptake on these tools depends on really how easy they are to use. And so that's something that we are focused on right now, is how do we make all of our tools easier to use? We know people don't want to have to fill out a lot of paperwork, and we don't want you to have to do that either. And so we're really working on making our tools easier to use.
And I'm also wondering, is this when you get into a drought, these programs must, I guess, get a lot more customers all of a sudden. People are like, trying to figure out how to reduce my water use, or, this lawn is taking up a lot of water. Maybe I should do something different. Do you get into really busy periods like that?
We absolutely do. And our conservation team is great about bringing on some additional temporary staff to help with the backlog of calls. We always want people to get a response in a timely manner. So we're really focused on that. For example, if you are worried about you're not sure how to set the timer on your irrigation system, we have videos online that you can watch. If you call us, we'll walk you through it. So we really want to provide that one-on-one support wherever we can.
So, Marisa, let's move to Austin's Water Forward plan. So, let's start out with why the plan was created originally and what the purpose of this plan is.
Sure. So the plan was originally created to address the historic drought that we experienced here in Central Texas from 2008 to 2016. The City Council had convened a task force back in 2014 to come up with recommendations on how we could weather that drought. One of their key recommendations was to develop what they called an integrated water resource plan, just a term and a type of plan that's been around for some time. That type of plan looks at all water resources, all sources of water as valuable, and ways that a utility or a community can make use of those different sources of water in an integrated manner. After that task force had completed their work, Austin Water began scoping and thinking about how we would develop this integrated water resource plan. And we worked closely with another task force that our city council created, the Austin Integrated Water Resource Planning Community Task Force, which rolls right off the tongue. So we tend to call them the Water Forward Task Forces for short. We started that process back in May of 2015, and from May 2015 to November of 2018, we developed the first iteration of the Water Forward Plan. And we did a lot of community outreach because we really wanted to reflect Austin's values within that planning process. After that, original plan was developed and was unanimously approved by council, we worked through implementation of the plan strategies. The planning drivers, things like population growth and drought, worse than droughts we've experienced in the past, and the future impacts of climate change are still the key drivers for our planning and our water resource management, and remain key drivers in this most recent update that we completed to the Water Forward Plan. We are updating the plan on a regular cycle, and so we began the next update in 2022, and then we completed here in November of 2024. And again, we're lucky to have council support and received unanimous council approval of this most updated plan. But the key purpose of this iteration of the plan includes, some of the things that we had wanted to drive towards in the last plan, and then additional considerations like, providing equitable and affordable water supplies for our community, in addition to continuing to provide safe and reliable water services and water supplies for our community for the next 100 years.
So is it, you just said 100 years. So obviously, the water planning process the state has, produces a 50-year plan. Mm-hmm. Every 5 years it's updated. Your plan is for 100 years.
Yes, that's correct. We have developed a more deterministic portfolio of strategies, so a list of conservation, reuse, and supply strategies that have target yields for the first 50 years of the planning horizon. And then for the latter 50 years, we've created what we call an adaptive management plan. And you can think of it like a decision tree, or you could think of it like a choose your own adventure book. Depending on the scenarios that we face in the future related to climate change and growth in water demands, and the development of regional supplies by LCRA or others that could also benefit Austin, we could follow different pathways in implementing water strategies during that longer period of time. We went down that path of developing an adaptive management plan for the latter 50 years, and that was something new for this plan update, just because we recognize that there's so much more uncertainty when you get that far out into the future.
So that kind of long time horizon, do you think that there are businesses that are looking at that and trying to figure out what their future is in Central Texas or in Austin, or who's using that horizon for a purpose other than the folks who are water planning in Austin?
I hope that folks, our customers here, whether you're a residential customer, whether you're a commercial or industrial customer, I hope that folks look at that plan and do see that we do have to take the long-term view when it comes to investment in our infrastructure and investment in these types of strategies, whether they're conservation or reuse strategies for individual businesses or for the city as a whole. I think that we need to share and educate folks that these strategies are not just for today and being able to weather droughts today, but they are for the long term, and that by planning so far out into the future, we're able to reduce costs overall and able to better manage those costs and make our water supplies more affordable in the long term.
So I can imagine that a company might look at that and say, well, I'm more confident about my future in Austin because the city is thinking really far ahead.
We think it's a responsible approach to take. When you're in a drought-prone region, we think that that's the best way to do business and to make sure that we are making our supplies as reliable as possible.
So what are some of the specific projects that you're outlining in this plan?
Sure. So within the Water Forward Plan, like Shay mentioned, we have a big focus on conservation. One of our strategies is to reduce utility side water losses. So that's tightening up leaky pipes and being able to identify losses within our distribution system that are on the utilities side of the infrastructure. We want to focus on that more in the future, and we've had a consultant do a holistic review of our water loss programs and provide a number of recommendations that the utility is working to prioritize and implement over the next several years. We also have strategies to make better use of the data that we're collecting via our digital meters or advanced metering infrastructure, and to also provide more information, education, and outreach to our customers via the MyATX water portal. Longer term, we'll be able to use some of that data not just in our water resource planning, but also as we transition to implement a strategy that we call water budgeting. Right now, we're requiring that new developments submit water benchmarks that provide us information on how much water a development could potentially use in the future and opportunities for them to conserve or reuse on site. In the future, then a water budget will use that type of information and develop an estimate of how much water different types of development or customers should be trying to use within their development. That will help us to identify kind of ways that we can encourage customers to meet those water budgets. One way that folks do that is by setting rates that sometimes charge a surcharge if you use more water than your water budget allows. We also have a number of different reuse strategies within the plan, and we're talking about reuse at multiple scales. We're talking about on-site reuse, so turning a building almost into a closed-loop system when it comes to non-potable sources and end uses. And then we also have strategies in the plan that look at larger scales of reuse. Decentralized reclaimed could reuse water at the neighborhood scale. So a smaller plant that's collecting wastewater that's produced within a neighborhood, treating that to reclaim water standard and then piping it out through a purple pipe distribution system to nearby homes and businesses for use for non-potable purposes. And then we also have our centralized reclaimed infrastructure. Right now, we've got a total demand of about 5,000 acre feet per year for that system, and we're looking at building that system out so that we can meet a target of about 21,000 acre feet per year in 2080. So we've paired that with requirements for folks to connect to that system for new development, and then our Austin Water team has developed a great program called Go Purple to try to offset some of the financial burden of connecting to that system and implementing reuse and making that more affordable. And then we have potable supply strategies. And we have really focused in this plan on stretching our existing supplies, like we've mentioned before. So a key part of that is storage. Our climate change projections show that there will be wet times in the future that will be interspersed by longer, more severe drought periods. So we want to capitalize on those wet times, be able to take water when it's available to us via our existing run-of-river water rights or, from our Highland Lakes contracts, and be able to store that water. One way would be through what we call an aquifer storage and recovery facility, where we take water, treat it to potable drinking water standards, inject it underground where it's safe from evaporation, and then that water would be available to us to withdraw during drought periods. And then we're looking at even using existing Lake Walter E. Long as an off-channel reservoir of sorts. We take water again from our existing Colorado River and Highland Lake supplies and pull that up to Lake Long, where then it could be stored and also treated to potable drinking water standards. Those are just some of the strategies within our plan. There are others.
Well, I'm a big fan of aquifer storage and recovery. The people who listen to this podcast are well aware of that. And, going back to San Antonio, of course, San Antonio's got a very large facility for that that's been operating for decades now. Mm-hmm. I actually remember when I was working for a river authority a decade or two ago that, we were kind of looking at ASR options for Hays County east of I-35 and trying to figure out whether that might make sense in the future. That was quite a while ago, but it sounds like that now there are some maybe more concrete plans to do that, which is good. That
there's actually a requirement for any region in the state water plan that is that has extensive supply needs to look at ASR. So there's an incentive and a requirement in many areas of Texas to be really exploring ASR. And as a result of that, the geotechnical, hydrogeological data needed to find those areas where it can be used effectively is really expanding. And so I think that's great for the future of being able to use that strategy.
So the Water Development Board has a study, which you've probably seen, that when you look at, you think, well, you could do ASR pretty much anywhere. I mean, it's not really, specific in terms of, an analysis of, an area where you might put the facility, but it in general says that there are probably options for ASR all over the state. So that's good. Texans are lucky, I think, and we'll be lucky in the future that we have those options. So what in this plan, the Water Forward plan, is unique in terms of what you might do in the long term, unique among major cities? I was talking to folks in El Paso and getting ready to talk to them again about their new direct reuse facility, which is a unique one. And I imagine that y'all are probably looking at some unique things too.
I think Marisa talked about the 100-year timeline. That's certainly relatively unusual. And because of understanding that we are in a drought-prone region, we really need to take the long view. And associated with that is our kind of the integrated water management part of it. So the idea that all water is useful and needed and a part of the total equation. So Marisa talked quite a bit about the different sources of water, capturing rainwater, capturing air conditioning condensate from a large building. There's other sources of water that we can be using and reusing for non-potable uses. And then underlying all of that, I would say what we're really aiming to do with the Water Forward plan is plan for uncertainty. And so we know this area is going to grow, but we don't know exactly where or when the people will come. We know that the climate is changing, but we can't predict when this drought will end and the next drought will begin and how long and deep it will be. So what we are aiming to do with this plan is to give us many different tools in our toolbox to bridge those periods of drought and take advantage of the periods where water is plentiful. And I think that to me is the fundamental aspect of the Water Forward plan that I'm most proud of.
That's a interesting issue. We've got, of course, reservoirs which are constructed and their yield is really based on the drought record. Mm-hmm. And now you've exceeded the drought record here in this basin, and drought record, the 1950s drought. And so you've exceeded that now. And, I often keep thinking, we need some projects that are projects to store water for circumstances that are really, beyond what could, be anticipated based on what's happened in the past. And I don't know, it's hard to do. It's a lot of money for water project that you don't know when you'll need it or when you will use it, which is kind of a deterrent for something like that. But all the uncertainty kind of points to that in the future, I think. I don't know. I'm just curious what you think.
Well, I think what we realize now is we can't look backwards to look forwards. And that's where the adaptive management strategies that Marisa was talking about really come into play, is continuously updating our projections, continuously reviewing where we are, where we've been, to get a holistic view of how we might adjust our plans, aquifer storage and recovery, reclaimed water, all of our strategies. We have a desalination strategy for brackish groundwater in the future plan. When those come online and how big they need to be are knobs we can turn as we gain more information, and as we do our adaptive management plan updates.
Yeah, and I think a part of it too that we've been kind of learning about and refining over the past few years is how you implement these strategies in a way that reduces regret over time. So when we're looking at some of our near-term supply strategies, what are some strategies that have multi-beneficial components that are supporting, for example, like our existing centralized reclaim system, our existing supplies, and then takes a little step further to be able to provide additional drought benefits in the event that we get into an emergency situation that we've never been in before. And then you take a step further and further out to, expand supply options over time in a way that is trying to not necessarily exactly time these strategies in advance of droughts, but just reduce the amount of regret over time.
Right. What I like about the way people are thinking about these problems now, just thinking about 15 or 20 years ago, I would ask some folks that I was working with, well, what happens if we exceed the drought of record? And they'd say, well, we don't know. We plan to meet or repeat the drought of record. And then I, did a tree rings study with some colleagues and saw some droughts last 500 years that were much worse and much longer, and thought, well, that could be a problem. But today, what I think is really important for the future is that people are thinking about that, and they're like, okay, we need to have the backup plans and how we are going to proceed should we get to this point that is a point that nobody wants to see, right, but could happen. And so I think that's really positive in that water managers in the water community, I think, is kind of pivoted on that and is looking beyond the drought record. So that's some editorializing there, right? Sorry about that. So, Marisa, I understand that as you mentioned, the plan was updated in 24. What were some of those updates?
Sure. So in the 2024 update, we updated our demand projections. Our water demand projections are driven by population growth. So we've got updated population growth projections in there. This time around, rather than having one scenario of population growth, we had three, the low, medium, and high. So we have three associated water demand projection scenarios as well. We allocate those demands all across the city. We break those down to the end use level. So we have spatial demands that we use within our planning to help inform how much demand is available to be met by non-potable reuse strategies and how conservation. We have updated forecasts of potential regional supplies. So the Lower Colorado River Authority, we love them. We work with them closely, has plans to develop additional strategies to have additional supplies for the basin. And so we have 3 different scenarios of regional supply development, because those regional supplies could provide benefits for the city of Austin as well as other users of these shared resources. We worked closely with the University of Texas at Austin to develop updated climate projections, updated projections of temperature and precipitation and other key information that we then put into our water availability model for the Lower Colorado River Basin. Beyond just developing scenarios that are looking at less or more severe climate futures, we also develop these stochastic projections where we essentially resequence the historical hydrology to develop synthetic droughts worse than the drought of record. I've mentioned lots of different scenarios and projections, and so combined, all of this creates hundreds and hundreds of potential future scenarios that we use to test different groupings of water management strategies against. Another kind of new for this plan method that we used was to use a kind of a computational method that creates millions of groupings of water supply strategies, and tests those millions of groupings of strategies against our hundreds of different scenarios and comes up with kind of a Pareto front of, looking at performance and cost of these different groupings of strategies, and helps us to kind of narrow in on which groupings of strategies are going to be best over the period of time that we were evaluating.
The way I like to think about this front that Marisa is talking about is all these different combinations of strategies and how they perform against the different combinations of possible futures. You can sort of identify how can we get the best benefit for our money, or how much money does it take to get the level of benefit that we're targeting. And so it really helps us narrow in on, how do you decide how big a project needs to be?
Right.
And we do that through this modeling effort, and then we check it and recheck it, every few years to make sure that we're on track.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what you were saying a minute ago, Marisa, the demand projections that you updated. So I'm guessing, projecting greater demand maybe than was in the previous plan, or how are those updated?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. So in the previous plan, our population projections for the 100-year planning horizon were actually a little bit higher than the population projections that we included within this planning process. We have a new city demographer. We worked with our city demographer to create those population projections. Some interesting trends happening in Austin, just with looking at births and deaths and in-migration and out-migration. We're just seeing a reduction in number of births over time, and we are seeing a little bit less in-migration. So that will tend to reduce our overall population growth a little bit than was previously projected in the last plan, the 2018 plan.
Interesting. And you also mentioned how you're incorporating climate change projections into your planning.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to incorporating that into your modeling, any other ways that you're taking account for that?
Well, it's the key drivers in the modeling. And as I talk about it, it sounds so high level. It sounds so easy. It's a big lift. But we also do try to, as we're looking at these different scenarios, we have to pair the demand scenarios with with associated climate scenarios. And so, you can imagine higher demands get associated with worse climate scenarios that are hotter and drier. So that's kind of one way in which you see the reflection of climate and demands.
Well, not everyone is doing that, so that's good.
Yeah. I think you can tell by listening to Marisa speak that we have a tremendous amount of technical expertise within Austin Water, and we are partnering with a lot of technical experts from the University of Texas, from our Water Forward Task Force, the city demographer, and others where we're really bringing in all the expertise that we can in order to support this very complex effort.
I will do a small shout out. We had also, in addition to working with the University of Texas at Austin, we had a climate technical advisory group who provided input kind of in real time as we were developing the climate projections. John Nielsen Gammon was a part of that group, as well as Julie Vano from NCAR, and they provided really key and valuable input as we did that work. Well,
I know that John Nielsen Gammon doesn't live here, but there are a lot of water experts in Austin, so it sounds like you're able to take advantage of that, because you look at Austin and all the people who are involved with water in one way or another, and it's kind of it's per capita, it's a pretty good place to be.
We care a lot about our creeks and rivers in Central Texas, that's for sure.
That's right.
Right. So, Shay, kind of, thinking from your perspective as the director of Austin Water, I mean, what do you think are the greatest challenges that you're going to be facing in the upcoming decades?
I would say the uncertainty of future conditions is the biggest unknown for the future. And then having this community conversation about the role that each of us needs to play, making sure that as new developments are being developed, they understand what their role is, because it's very important. Each of us in our own homes, understanding what our role is, and really raising, we all talked at the beginning about having grown up or spent time in San Antonio, and how the state of water resources there was just built into everyday life. That's what we need in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So, Marisa, my last questions to you. How can my listeners find out more about Austin Water and the Water Forward plan?
So, folks can visit our website at austintexas.gov/waterforward, and they can get access to the new Water Forward plan, Water Forward 2024. It is pretty short for a 100-year water plan. It's less than 70 pages. We also have some great resources on our website to describe the strategies, the conservation, reuse, and supply strategies that are in the plan. And as folks are visiting our website, they can also find resources for ways that they can take advantage of Austin Water's conservation programs and learn more about how we manage our water supplies.
Well, Shay, Marisa, I have to tell you, not only thank you for being on Talk Plus Water, but I'm feeling really spoiled, because we're in this great studio and have all this wonderful equipment, and I'm thinking, it's all kind of downhill from here, because I'm going to be back to going to a bar with some friends and putting my phone in the middle of the table. It's just not the same.
Well, we appreciate the city giving us the ability to use this studio today. It's been a really terrific time with you, Todd. Thank you so much for having us and giving us the opportunity to talk about this important work.
Right. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
This has been Talk Plus Water, and my guests today were Shay Ralls Roalson, the director of Austin Water, and Marisa Flores Gonzalez, the program manager for Austin Water's Water Forward plan. I want to thank you, the listener, for spending your valuable time on this podcast. Finally, I want to give a big thank you to Anna Huff at the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University for getting each episode of Talk Plus Water ready to go. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let us know with a review, and we're now also on Patreon. I don't exactly know what that means, but I've signed up for it. And so I think if you go look us up and you want to send us $1 or something, that'd be nice. But if not, at least leave us a review. That would be Appreciate it. So, my name is Todd Bottler. Let's talk water again soon.